looks crooked.
Hey, welcome. It's Gulfstream Park Day. We're getting excited. I've got the one and only Eddie C. on. Good morning, Eddie.
Good morning, Chris, and good morning to Art and Pete Aiello. Great to have you guys on here.
Good morning, gentlemen. Love to see you guys. I'm here with one and only Honest Art, the poor man's friend.
Good morning to all.
Good
What's
morning.
going on?
We're going to ask you guys, did you guys have breakfast together this morning?
No, we don't usually actually have food unless Eddie brings it. We have rousing conversations. We've already had a 10-minute discussion of this week's wrestling show. So we're good to go. A lot of what we talk about on regular days is exactly what we put to video on Sunday. So it works out.
You see how it works, Chris? I have to bribe my way into the friendship here.
Hey, Eddie, this is what I'm having for breakfast, just so you know. I've got my spicy V8 right here. You know, like I said, let's do a salute. You ready?
Salute.
Salute.
V8. Oh, all right.
We're trying to get V8 as a sponsor.
Those other guys are doing fireball shots, Pete, and everything else. So we're just doing V8 shots because we're old.
Gin and soda for him.
All right, so let's kick this off. So, Pete, I guess you're going to be the translator. So, I'm going to direct a few questions to Art right now. So, you and Art, tell us how this morning ritual of you two getting together in the mornings, how that started.
Well, I think it's better that Art tells. They want to know how we actually met and started to have morning meetings all the time.
Oh,
It's your fault.
well, it's got to be 8 years
What's
ago.
there?
Oh, 8 years ago, he used to, when I worked in the front, he used to me in the buy in the morning. And somebody says, you know who that guy is? I said, no. He said, that's Aiello, the announcer. And I just started to kibitz with him, and that's how we met. He been a good and loyal friend ever since. But he used to come by my stand.
Yeah,
up
so
front.
from my perspective, he started messing with me, and I doubled down and messed with him back. And that's exactly what he wanted me to do. So it started out with me leaving the jockey's room 5 minutes early to go say hi to him and see what was going on.
Yeah.
5 minutes became 10 minutes, 10 minutes became 20 minutes, and now I don't even go to the jockey's room. I just come sit with him for an hour. So.
And
My favorite saying to him was up there in the front, Aiello, I've had enough of you. See ya. We had some fun up there.
Pete, have you gotten him to handicap Roletto Downs with you yet?
Is my head crooked? I mean, take a look at me.
No, your head's crooked. It's perfectly
like
straight.
I'm going this way.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
So, ask Art how he got started at Gulfstream or being a track guy.
I think I understood you. Your volume was a little low, but I grew up in South Florida. So, being back in South Florida and being the announcer at Gulfstream is really kind of something that I never really thought would be attainable. For me, I loved horse racing, and I just wanted to get a job in the business, and hopefully that job was announcing races. And as I always make the baseball analogy, if I was a career minor league baseball player, that was fine with me because I was getting paid to do what I love. And the fact that I'm now, working for the Yankees of horse racing, that never really felt attainable to me. It wasn't even a goal because I didn't think it was attainable. So to be here and to call the races every day is it's something that I don't ever need reminding of just how lucky I am.
So if you could ask Art his favorite jockeys and if he's got any stories to tell about his favorite jockeys.
I struggled to hear you. I might have to move my shot. Your audio is super low. I heard Chris fine, but
Yeah. So he wanted to know who Art's favorite jockeys are and if he has any
they
favorite
want to know.
stories.
They want to know who your favorite jockeys are.
Well, Pablo Morales. Where's my thumb? Pablo Morales, Edgar Zayas, and one of my all-time favorites was Early Bias.
You forgot your favorite of all time.
He's on the top of the list. That's a double. Where is it? There. Harry Oates, out there in Belterra. Yeah, I love Harry. I had the privilege of meeting him in person. Great guy to talk to. But he's my number one. But those other fellows are guys I look to. Who are yours? Oh, they're asking the question.
Yeah, they're asking you. They're not asking me.
Oh, all right. That's
Pete,
who I
can you-
like.
Pete,
Well,
Pete,
since
can
he
you hear
since he
better
asked
now?
the question, Pete, give me your top three now.
Ooh, that's tough. Wow. Off the top of my head, Pablo Morales, I agree. I'm actually the reason why he likes him so much. Pablo Morales. Who else? Art? And I guess I'd have to say the same three as him, actually.
Yeah, you were.
Edgard and I are good friends, and I was in Cincinnati for 6 years. So, Perry Utes, I'm going to do everything, whatever small amount of power I have, to get him in the Hall of Fame. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame because he represents everything that the Hall of Fame and the horse racing community want to be represented in inductees. So, it's ironic because, ironically, Art liked Perry Utes before he even knew that I liked him.
Yeah,
so.
I did. The people that I used to know from Kentucky and Cincinnati, they put me on to him, and boy, I just fell in love with the guy. He's a great asset to this business, for sure.
Pete, can you hear me better now?
I can hear you better now, yeah.
All right, so ask Art about some of the cool horse racing memorabilia he has, and if he's got any great stories to share about that.
They want to know about racing memorabilia that you have. Do you have any racing memorabilia that you cherish and enjoy?
Well, I was lucky enough to meet Carl Nasker, and I've got some pictures of Carl that he signed personally for me from 1935 when he was a rodeo rider. I cherish that. I got from this guy here. I got a beautiful bobblehead of Perry. I got a picture of Pablo, and I got a book signed by Carl Nasker that he wrote, and a few other trinkets. But those are the ones that stand out in my. But the ones of Nasker when he was a bronc rider, they're great.
Even I didn't know about that.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, yeah. He's a great guy. Great. And Wanda, his wife, is a great gal.
That's fantastic. That's cool.
I think he's the one that gave Ian Wilkes his break here in the United States. And I know Ian really looks up to him. He's a great person and a great trainer. That's what it is.
All
right. So Pete, let's we got to start with my most enjoyable, funniest day in the history of Gulfstream Park when Art the inventory sheets got blown away, and you got to tell that story because you're a great storyteller. And
I think it might be one of those stories that's funnier if you were here. You were here, so you know how funny it was. But if it's all right with you, can we relive the story of the day that Eddie brought us breakfast? And it was a bit windy, and you were trying to take inventory with your programs. And
I think that's what started us off.
No, well, yeah, it was actually probably one of the first videos that I took. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the day and I was jumping in the bushes. Oh, that was But yeah, go ahead. You can tell it.
No, but they want you to tell.
Well, that was I was trying to get my paperwork together at Augusta Win. You had brought pastry yet, which I never got to have one. By the way,
That's because
but
you
anyway,
got so upset.
I really got upset with it, and then Peter, of course, was with this thing, and it turned out to be a funny. And then I started to laugh at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you were mad. It was one of the.
I was ripping. I was ripping. Anyway, I never found it.
You were in the parking lot looking for
Oh,
it.
I went in the lot. I almost went to the barns. But I didn't do that. But yeah,
That's when we asked you about it. You said that a horse had ate your seat.
Oh yeah, one of those nags. I said munched on my paperwork. Yeah.
All right, so Pete, we talked this morning briefly about the Real Players video that Rozzy put out with that random guy Archie from the farmers market in Saratoga that we both thought was fantastic, and the message means a lot to everybody because it was a real world message. So talk to me about that video and what you thought of it.
Well, I mean, I think it was interesting. I try to avoid any sort of political discourse, especially on social media, at all costs. Not only because of the nature of me being, in the public eye with horse racing, but also because a lot of it is nuanced conversation, and I don't think that Twitter, especially, but even Facebook or any long form social media, I don't think it lends itself to nuanced conversation. This could lend itself to nuanced conversation. We've been talking now for almost 12 minutes, but I felt like I wanted to watch that video just to see different perspectives. And I think that in our society, I think we're kind of, and I know this is actually, I think this is also a microcosm for horse racing also. I think that we were a little bit of an echo chamber, and we naturally seek out opinions that justify our own opinion. And I think that one of the things that we should do better as a society is seek out differing opinions and listen. We don't have to agree, certainly not, but I think that we should listen and have some conversation. So I was intrigued when I saw the gentleman was holding wearing, actually, he wasn't holding, he was wearing a end racism sign, and I kind of watched it as fully expecting to disagree with some of what he had to say. Not that I don't think racism exists or that it's a major issue that should be addressed. That wasn't the point at all. But the thing that I enjoyed the most about it is that, and I commented on social media, which if I'm making a political comment on social media, that's a really big move for me, which was that I think that you could have removed, they were having a conversation about change. It really wasn't the conversation that the gentleman that hosted the Real Players podcast. It wasn't about really having conversation about racism. They did discuss racial related issues, but really the idea was, how do you affect change in society? And I think that the guy's message is powerful. And he said that the way that you can affect change in society is to, as an individual, do what you can to have as many conversations with as diverse a group of people as possible. And I couldn't agree with him more on that. And I thought that that was a powerful message, and it's a message that I would echo. I think that whether we're talking about handicapping angles on horse racing or trainer trends or life, I think that it's important to listen and to absorb information, whether you agree with it or not. I think that there's nothing wrong with absorbing information, if nothing more than to reject it as something you believe. But we needed to be a bit better about having, conversations in this country. And I think that, podcasts and long form discussions becoming more of a trend in society. I think that's a good thing. And I think that, everyone has a platform and a voice now, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. Hopefully that wasn't too rambling an answer for you.
No, I mean, obviously I thought the whole message that Archie was giving out there on that podcast was pretty darn good. The one takeaway I got is that he made it a point to say, let's not group everybody in a certain group. It's your individual life matters, and that's what matters the most.
Well,
I was
I mean, I think that, those guys, I got a lot of noise pollution here, by the way, so I apologize in advance for uh, any problems, technically speaking. Chris looks like he's ready to shut me off. Um, I think that there's nothing wrong with exposing and having a conversation about different issues or different people. And I think that one of the things that I still actually, and this could be maybe a hot take, but I still believe it to be somewhat of an underexploited thing with horse racing is there's so many good stories. And I mean, I think that that's one of the things that's the reason why that's why we have him. I mean, he certainly wasn't getting on the internet to talk about things or to tell people his story or who we are or whatever, whatever's going on in life. And I think that any opportunity to give people a voice, again, you don't have to agree with them. You really don't. That's the wonderful thing about technology. If you don't like it, don't watch it. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of people that will see this video and they have personal grudges against one of, or if not all four of us, and they won't watch this. Great. Sorry, but I think that anyway, going back to what I was trying to say is that horse racing has so many good stories. And I think that there's stories from all over the world. There's stories from different eras. There's stories from different perspectives. And the more often we get to tell stories, the better off we'll be as an industry and as a society, for that matter.
Well, the story of you and Art, I hope more people, when they come to Gulfstream, start bothering you the way I bother you guys and show up and say hi to both you and Art in the mornings. I think that's a great story to tell. And to piggyback on this, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Yeah, your love affair with Hialeah, um, you running around as a kid in the silks in the paddock like you owned the place, your relationship with the Brunettis, and your first race call at Hialeah. I mean, I love that whole story, and let's keep it to under 20 minutes.
Well, I think that it's important to give you the background. And again, I apologize for the noise pollution. Actually, I think Anastart has him shutting down the leaf blower since there's no leaves. But nevertheless, that's Hialeah is where I fell in love with horse racing. My family used to go to, my grandfather on my father's side. If we weren't at a track, or it was Christmas or Easter, I didn't see him. So I got to enjoy those family outings. And I was young. I was a toddler. I was 2 and 3 years old. So we went down there, and my grandmother went into the gift shop in the clubhouse and bought me a pink jockey suit. And I ran around Hialeah like I was a kid in a candy store. And I think that that's really the seed of enjoying horse racing and enjoying, everything about it, but not so much. I was too young to really appreciate the analytical side of the industry, or even really probably what was going on around me. I think I just kind of became enchanted with the environment because it was my family and my family together. And so that was the seed. So I always had a sweet spot for Hialeah growing up in South Florida. I grew up in West Palm Beach, and so we would go to Calder and Gulfstream and Hialeah. So when I was in college, the goal was to announce races, and you dream. And as I said, announcing the races at Gulfstream was never really an attainable dream. And I guess at the time I had a dream that was even less attainable, which, friends would say, "Oh, do you want to call the Derby? Do you want to call the Breeders' Cup?" And I said, "No." I said, "My dream would be to call races at Hialeah." And they said, "Well, you have a better chance of calling the Derby or the Breeders' Cup because Hialeah's closed and, they're never going to reopen." So, sorry, that's sweat, by the way. So anyway, fast forward to 2008, which was my first full summer at River Downs. Well, actually, it wasn't a full summer, but it was my first summer at River Downs calling races. I worked at Beulah Park that winter. So now we're into the spring of 2009. I'm in Cincinnati, and they made the announcement, Hialeah to reopen. They're going to run quarter horses. So, of course, I was working there. I walked right into the racing office at River Downs. I said to the racing secretary, I said, "Ed," I said, don't hold my spot. I said, I'm not coming back to Beulah. I'm going to work at Hialeah. And he said a very logical question. He says, well, do you have a job there yet? I said, no. I said, but give my spot away at Beulah. I said, I'm going to work there. I don't care if it's sweeping up tickets or whatever. So I called Frank Maramati, who had never even met, just professional courtesy type of thing. And I said, hey, listen, if I wanted to get my resume and my DVD to the right person at Hialeah, who would I get it to? And he said, send it to Steve Brunetti. I didn't even know who Steve Brunetti was. I'd never heard of Steve Brunetti. I only heard of John Brunetti. He says, no, send it to Steve. So long story short, Steve Brunetti wasn't working there every day. So the secretary would sort the mail when the mailbox got full. And Steve Brunetti is John Brunetti's son, youngest son. So Frank knew that and knew that I may not send it to the right person if I tried to be more targeted. Anyway, longer story short, the general manager read my cover letter. I wrote a very emotional cover letter about the significance of Hialeah to me and how I always wanted to work there. Walked into the marketing director's office and said, hey, do you have an announcer yet? Yes, I do. We hired John Lees. He's an announcer at Lone Star and calls, some big quarter horse races. We felt like that would be the right move. He says, well, that's fine. He says, maybe we need a backup. Read this kid's cover letter. And so I got brought on at Hialeah to be not the announcer, to be the marketing assistant. Got promoted a whole bunch of times after that, but that's not part of the actual story here. So John Lees was working at Lone Star. Lone Star had, I think it was the refrigerator, huge race as the water trucks and tractors go by. Again, Chris, I apologize. Next time we'll do this with the comfort of no noise pollution. But John could not make opening day. Opening day was a Saturday, and Lone Star's closing night was Friday night. So I will never forget where I was or what the conversation was, but marketing director Mike Cronin said, hey, listen, do you mind calling the races on opening day? And that was surreal. And there was they didn't have, and they never did. They never got to fix the press box. It wasn't a priority. So they literally knocked down the partitions and the grandstand boxes right on the finish line and laid down metal sheeting, ran a couple of mic cables and a couple of plexiglass windows. And that was the announcer booth. That's where the placing judges were right next to me. And then the stewards were right next to them. So we were in the crowd. We might as well have been in the crowd. And there was 27,000 people there opening day. So I remember being quite emotional throughout that afternoon because my mom actually died 2 weeks before that, suddenly. So it was an interesting part of my grieving process because my mom never liked horse racing and she never liked the idea of me working in it. But one of the best memories I have with my mom was her knowing how much I liked Hialeah and going with me on the train, the tri-rail from West Palm to Hialeah on opening day 2001, which would have been the last time they ran. So for my mom to voluntarily go to the horse races was a big deal. So it all kind of came full circle, and I worked there while I was working. I mean, again, I could make this story, like you said, Eddie, I could make it a half an hour long, but the bottom line is I would not be working at Gulfstream, but for Hialeah. Because what ended up happening is that Mr. Brunetti, John Sr., he took a liking to me and he didn't, as he put it, I don't want you on someone else's roster. So he didn't like the idea of me going to Cincinnati for the summer. So he made me resign at River Downs and work. By that time, I was running pretty much anything to do with the parimutuel operation I was running. So he had me manage the race book and the OTB at Hialeah. And then that was the same summer that Gulfstream decided to run heads up against Calder. And Tim Ritvo didn't want to uproot somebody with a family or some sort of, strong economic link to their community, which was the right thing to do. Because at the time, Gulfstream wasn't sure whether they were going to run 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. It started out as a very political Cold War type move. So they wanted somebody local. And had I been in Cincinnati, I would not have been local. But I was at Gulfstream, and I mean, I was at Hialeah, and I was managing the OTB. So they only run 2 days a week at that time, just for Saturday, Sunday. So because I was local, because Larry Comas and I were friends, and because, again, I was local, so I was dispensable, and not in a bad way, but just in a reality situation, I got my foot in the door calling the summertime races at Gulfstream, and the rest is history.
I love that.
Chris, you
I
go
love
ahead.
that. Yeah, I got a few questions. Is Art still there or did he bail?
No, he's here. I just moved so I could make sure.
I'm just curious, Art has been around for a while and he's worked there for a long time. I don't know exactly how long he said he worked at Gulfstream Park, but Pete, ask him what's been his favorite day at Gulfstream Park out of all the years he's worked there and why.
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer, so I'll get him queued up and ask him that. They would like to know, in all the years that you worked in South Florida, because you actually worked at Hialeah for 2 seasons, so we can lump that in, but in all the days that you worked in South Florida, what is the most memorable day for you and why?
Oh, that's a hard question for me to answer. I enjoy every day. I enjoy being out, meeting people. Really, I'll be honest. Well, the biggest thing I could remember, like, would be the Breeders' Cup.
99?
Yeah, I worked it. But that's in the old building.
Yeah, the old.
But that was a big day for me. That was a lot of people here, you know. But yeah, but I just enjoy every day, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first Pegasus was probably, that was the most emotional I've ever seen you get with me around, was just, but I think that was more so you living vicariously for me and wanting me to be successful. But
yeah. I was in the middle there.
Yeah,
we took a picture. Yeah. That was a. Yeah, I was hoping, everything. You were kind of a little bit nervous, but you did a great job as usual.
Hey, Pete, does Art ever give you
know,
tips on announcing? Like he says you blew that race or anything?
No, never. As a matter of fact, I don't know that he's ever critiqued a call ever. They said,
Really?
"Do you give me tips on calling races, or do you have comments on my race calls?"
I went up on the booth a couple times. I'm amazed the way he just picks up and calls the race. And then boom. But no,
I try to tell him, Chris. I try to tell him I would love it if he would come up, because he gets done a couple races early, and he's so nervous to come upstairs because he's worried he's going to say something while my mic is on, or he's going to mess up my concentration or something. But he doesn't like he gets so nervous to come visit me in the booth. So as we have the water truck go by again, at least it's been a real trackside experience. You've got the sound of the track here.
Listen, that's right. I was gonna say we can't get the smells, but I can get the sounds. That's okay, Pete. It works out in the end. But the other thing I wanted to ask you, Pete, is you're a part of that Arizona program where you went to college. I have talked to a lot of people in the past 30 days who are part of that. And, are you guys kind of like a fraternity or anything? Because I am surprised at how many of you guys have actually went to Arizona to take that major in that course.
Well, I can tell you from a professional standpoint, talking about getting the job at River Downs, that was due in a large part to Luke Kreitboss, who was my mentor while I was at school, and he was my mentor because he went to the school. But even just a smaller thing was Ed Vomaca, who was the racing secretary at River Downs and the director of racing at Beulah. The reason why I got a job in the racing office at Beulah was because Ed went to the U of A and the general manager at Beulah, Mike Weiss, went to the U of A, and they didn't like the idea of an alumni having no job. I had no place to go. Forget no job. I had no place to go. So we were one man over in the racing office that season, primarily because they pretty much gave me a job. So, yeah, I mean, we network. There's, we have at least two. There was 2 or 3 that work in the office at Gulfstream. Actually, yes, Mike Costanzo, our racing secretary, he went. We have a placing judges who went more recently. The new chart caller, one of the new chart callers, he went. Different generations. Eric Zimney and I are good friends. Dan Silver and I are good friends. Dan works for RTN. Eric, of course, ran Charlestown for so many years. My best friend is assistant director of racing operations at Santa Anita now. His wife went to the program. So, there's a lot of us that stick together, and I'm actually going to the symposium on racing. It'll be my first time back at the symposium since I was a student there. So I'm very, very excited about that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I told Eddie C if he ever wants to get into the business, he's going to have to go to Arizona and get his degree first.
Well, and the thing is that may sound crazy to him because he's an older guy, but that's not crazy at all. We had a lot of guys that, one guy in particular, I know he was working in the pharmaceutical business. His family had owned a few trotters. And he was in his late 30s. Eric came from a legal background after working at Suffolk to get an MBA. They have an MBA program there now, but even then you didn't need to go to the MBA program because they had a degree certification. So you could get a degree certification a year and a half on your bachelor's degree and use that as a networking tool, and kind of, broaden your skill set. So it's not really crazy at all. I mean, I had a guy that he's still a dear friend of mine that he was 47 when he went to the U of A for the degree certification. He's not working in the industry now, but that's not the U of A's fault. That's his fault. But he could have. So it's not unprecedented at all.
Yeah, I was thinking about opening up a horse player university. We can have it down in Miami Beach and see how that goes.
Hey, Pete,
right.
since I wasn't going to ask you this question, but you brought it up. The emotions of your first Pegasus, and I remember the story that you told me. I'd like to hear you retell it because what I remember the most of it myself was walking out of the track that day and going, "Hey, this guy Pete Aiello, he's pretty good." So talk about, and I want to make sure you mention. Give the time.
You're asking about my emotions with the first Pegasus. I don't know. I'm sorry, your audio is so low.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, that's kind of the first time you and I met. But the thing about it is that you go back to the first comment I made about not caring where I worked in the industry and then getting to play for the Yankees. Put that in perspective is the only time that I had called a grade 1 race before the first Pegasus was the 2016 Arkansas Derby. I went to work at Oaklawn for what I thought was going to be a lot of years, and it was my choice that it ended up only being one, getting the full-time gig here after that. But
that's with all the grays.
What's that?
That was the race with all the gray horses and
yeah. There were 6 grays. I think 3 of the 6 started with the letter C, and the Cupid was favored. And I even to this day having to announce now there's horses by Cupid in the winner's circle makes me a bit ill. And Creator was the horse I thought would win it. And so Cupid's on the lead going past the 5/16, and Creator's flying up the fence, and Cupid is clearly all done, and Creator's getting ready to, as I would say nowadays, tip and roll off the fence and win by 800. But when I went to articulate that, there wasn't an identification problem. It was a in transit speaking issue. And I went to say, Cupid's not going to get the job done, but Creator was on my mind. So what I said was, and Creator's not going to get the job done. That was what I exclaimed at the top of the string. Of course, that made no sense because Creator was 10-1. So to spotlight a horse 10-1 not getting the job done, clearly I meant Cupid was not going to get the job done. So the point of the story was I butchered the biggest race I had up until the first Pegasus. So imagine, again, using a baseball metaphor, imagine that your only at bat in the World Series was striking out looking on 3 straight pitches. And now you're back into the game. It's a 1-run game, and you have runners on first and second with 1 out. There's a lot of pressure there. There's a lot of different things that can happen, but when you walk up to the plate, I'm sure just because you're human, the first thing you're going to think of is, man, the last time I was in this situation, I struck out looking on 3 pitches. So my self-confidence level going into the Pegasus, the first one, was extremely low. So when I didn't mess up, and that was strictly my goal, was not to mess up, and I executed what I thought was a very good call. I was overcome by emotions that I can't think I would have ever thought I could have experienced. I mean, I remember it vividly. My whole career flashed before my eyes right after the Pegasus, and I thought about going to Hialeah. I thought about my grandpa. I thought about calling my first race in Tucson. I thought about, all the great people, Tampa Bay Downs letting me call my first big race. And by big race, I mean a race that people actually heard, not just on the county fair circuit in Arizona where I started, and how, Richard Grunder walked away from the mic after not missing a race day or a race in almost a decade or over a decade to let me call one for a resume, to working with Ross Morton at Finger Lakes. I mean, just everything flashed before my eyes, and I got really emotional and happy tears, but uncontrollable happy tears.
It's a lot of work for sure. I know I did a couple test runs on calling a race, and for everybody that's ever tried it, it's not easy. And what you do is so good. Eddie, I got to ask you a question now, Eddie. I'm going to put you on the spot. What's Pete's catchphrase when they're coming out of the gate?
Ooh, catchphrase coming out of the gate. I thought you were going to ask me about easy money, but I'd say. And they're off. I can't. It doesn't come to me.
Pete, what is it?
Sorry, I got another tractor going by.
It's okay. We like tractors.
I heard what you asked. I didn't hear what Eddie said.
Eddie doesn't know, because I'm going to tell you right now that I know. It's racing at Gulfstream.
That's what I thought you were asking.
That's how you start the first one. No, you know what? The problem is Eddie doesn't pay attention to details.
Well, there's actually a story that you might find interesting about that. When I started at River Downs, I was young, and I mean, I think about this actually all the time. So apologies if I'm going to get ready to go off on another 2-minute tangent. But when I started at River Downs, I was always of the opinion that there was a distinct difference in style needed for a track like River Downs versus a track like Gulfstream Park. In other words, you didn't do the same things in the minor league games that you did in the major league games. And so I felt like I needed to try to hone my craft and start, doing, things that were entertaining. And so when I was first working at River Downs, I was trying to be, just so corny. I mean, and I thought to myself, I need some sort of alliterative phrase. And it was River Downs. So I felt like racing at River was perfect. It was alliterative. And I did that. You go back and listen to any of my race calls from, I think, the 2009 season on. Every day, the first race was racing at River. I didn't do it every race, just the first race. So when I got to Gulfstream, I had a couple of friends and like, well, are you going to do racing at Gulfstream? I'm like, it's not alliterative. It doesn't sound right. Oh, no, you got to do it. You got to do it. I don't know. No, you got to do it. You got to do it. I said, okay, fine, I'll try it. So I did it. Nobody said anything. Second day I did it. Nobody said anything. Maybe a week and a half later, I'm sitting in the jocks room, and Eduardo Nunez walks in, and I said, hey, Eddie, how you doing? And I don't really know these guys at that point. And he looks at me, he goes, racing at Gulfstream. And he was the first to, Eddie Nunez was the first to like say it back to me. I was like, oh, you like that? He goes, yeah, I like that. And then, a couple days go by, somebody else did it. And then I thought to myself, wow, so this actually resonates. And I thought to myself in my head, I said, well, wait a minute. Maybe there's more stuff from River Downs that I did that people in Cincinnati liked that they would like in Florida. So I dusted off another one that I used to use in Cincinnati, Easy Money. And then Twitter went nuts. I said, wow, there was wisdom in that. And I think that the wisdom for me was that I was wrong about my comment that races at Riverdown should be called differently at Gulfstream and vice versa. And I think that what resonates with racing fans is passion and emotion, and that the emotion doesn't know the quality of the race, which ironically, that I would have agreed with well into my career. I didn't think that you should be less emotional about a call for a lesser race as you should for a big one. I always actually didn't think that was right at all. But I think that the moral of the story was that I'm in the emotion business. And if I can communicate and connect with people on an emotional level, that's where I can make an impact.
That's awesome. I love that response. Pete.
Yeah, that's great, Pete. Hey, Pete, and I know you got to go. So I got one last question, but it's for Art if he's not selling programs right now.
Say that again so I can make sure I hear him.
I said, I have one last question for Art. And since he didn't get any of the pastelitos that I brought last time, would he like me to bring pastelitos one morning here in the near future?
And he wants to know if you want pastelitos.
What?
He said you didn't get any pastries before. He wants to know if he can bring you some pastries.
Well, if he's coming by here, why not? It wouldn't be bad.
I don't think we can end any interview that he's involved with without a parting word from the man himself.
Well, this is honest Acapulco, and always remember, steer your coffee left to right. God is watching. Have a great day.
I didn't even have to prompt him for that. That's exactly what I was going.
That's awesome. I may just use that for the ending of the show from now on. That's well done. So, Eddie, anything else?
Just appreciate Pete coming on, and it's a friendship that started 3, 4, 5 years ago, whatever, and I'm very appreciative. And by the way, Pete, Chris gave me a hard time for not taking him up to your booth when he was down there this past year. So if you're gracious enough to accept us both next time down, I got to get Chris up there with you.
I appreciate you very much. And again, I apologize for the technical issues here. And Chris, the next time you have me on, we'll have it dialed up in my booth or somewhere where we won't have to worry about being able to hear everybody.
No worries. We love you, Pete. Thanks for the time. Thank you, Art.
We'll see you guys later.
All right. Have a good day.